Hello everyone, it's me, your average bonehead, Jay. Poppy Playtime, an indie mascot horror sensation that took the world by storm and is still relatively popular, continually revitalizing its popularity upon each new chapter's release. As of now, the game, about an ex-toy factory employee going back to his old stomping grounds and discovering that there's a lot of scary entities roaming the place, is now currently at its 4th chapter. Though despite the game's popularity, it has run into many controversies and also lots of criticism towards people who aren't particularly fans of the mascot horror genre. But we're not here to talk about any of that. We're here to hear my opinion on the game. And my thoughts are, I love it. In all seriousness, Poppy Playtime is currently my favorite horror game. Which I guess makes sense considering it's a genre I don't usually touch that much. But this game and all of its chapters just does it all for me. It has a really endearing story, amazing atmosphere, and it just tickles all the right things that just freak me the hell out. So yeah, I want to talk about the currently 4 chapters of this game. Though I think it'll be better if I just talk about them one video at a time. So without any further ado, let's go all the way back to October of 2021 and see how this now juggernaut horror franchise began. Back in October of 2021, Poppy Playtime Chapter 1, A Tight Squeeze, developed by Mob Entertainment, took the internet by storm by its, while familiar, still unique take on the mascot horror genre, especially since the usual master of this was kind of at the time. And the game was so popular it inspired obvious low-effort cash grab copycats that tried to do exactly what it did, except worse. Which somehow that also ended up affecting part of the reputation of Poppy's Playtime, like somehow that's the game's fault. But ignoring all of that, let's just see what Chapter 1 has in store for us. The story of Chapter 1 is by far the simplest of all the other chapters, which makes sense. Basically, the rundown is, you're an ex-employee of a toy company named Playtime Co. that has since been long defunct after everyone mysteriously went missing 10 years ago. But due to a mysterious VHS and note you got in the mail, it tells you to go and find the flower, so you head back to your old stomping grounds to uncover the mystery. And that's it. That is the entire setup you get for all of Chapter 1. I mean, there is some environmental storytelling going on here. Like through the state of the factory and the VHSs, you can tell that something horrible happened here, and due to the bloody toys littered all over the place, it can easily be surmised that obviously the toy monsters we're running from were once human children. But other than those contextual clues that will be expanded upon later, Chapter 1 doesn't really give you much in terms of a story. Though I'm not going to say that's a bad thing. It makes sense that it's a very simple setup, but it also is a very strong foundation for the other chapters to build on, and build on it did. But we'll get to that when we get to that. What we should really talk about is the gameplay. How does playing this game feel? It's basically a 10 to 20 minute walking simulator with a jump scare. Okay. As kinda true as that is, it's being a bit too harsh. The gameplay involves you walking around this huge factory and solving some environmental puzzles, with a bit of platforming here and there. The main gameplay gimmick of this game that sets it apart from others is the grab pack. The grab pack in this game is your Swiss Army knife. Aside from obviously being able to grab things, it is also your key card into different rooms, as well as your main way of solving puzzles by wrapping around these poles to connect circuits back together. Eventually, you even get the red hand, which lets you activate more switches, carry 2 things at once, and overall just gives you more length and versatility with your grab pack. In later chapters, you can end up doing more cool tricks and stunts, as well as end up getting more hands and attachments for your grab pack until it turns you into an unstoppable machine able to keep up with the horrors that await you. But for now, in Chapter 1, you are pretty limited in what you can do, but it's not that much of a problem. But anyways, getting back on track, once you get your grab pack, you go and open up this door and, oh no. So let's talk about the atmosphere. If there was one consistent compliment I could give Poppy Playtime across all 4 of its chapters, it would have to be atmosphere. If atmosphere was a sport, this game would be the Olympic gold medalist. This game nails it flawlessly. The atmosphere of this game not only helps the horror aspect, but it also helps the overall feeling of realism that they're going for. Like the visuals, as in not just the graphics, but I'm talking about the things you see all over the place. Namely, the aforementioned bloody toys everywhere, how run down the factory is, despite the fact that things still work. It ends up creating this very unsettling feeling like you're clearly not supposed to be back here. This is of course expertly contrasted with all the welcoming and colorful characters splattered on posters and murals all around the place. What really also helps make this place feel like a real factory is the way the grab pack, and by extension the puzzle solving, is implemented into the in-universe workings of the factory. And what I mean by that is through the VHSs. The VHSs that are found throughout every chapter are usually meant to be your main tidbits of lore, but they also double as your tutorials. But rather than just being simple tutorials, they're framed in a way like an old training video that management would show new employees of how to use these things. Even down to calming music, which we will get to in a second, and a semi-comedic edge to them, warning employees to be careful with them. And one more thing about the VHSs that I love that also helps with the atmosphere of the game is how not every single one of them is just a tutorial or lore. Sometimes they do something as simple as just letting us hear the frustrations of employees that were just working this factory, minding their own business, that had no idea of any of the other horrible workings behind the scenes, that were just there doing their normal factory job. Which helps us transition into the sound design. The sounds are perfect. The whole thing has this semi-creepy ambiance to it. Sound effects are perfect and directional, so it rather expertly immerses you into the world they've presented. All that is helped by the music. For being a horror game, the music of Poppy's Playtime is not really that scary. If anything, majority of this game and the other chapters' soundtracks are rather calming. Outside of the obvious moments. But yeah, for the most part, the music is very, I'm gonna say this word again, atmospheric. I'll be talking about things like sound design and music in each chapter, but in chapter 1 especially, it really is calming music. In fact, one of my favorite bits of music in the whole game is the title screen. Have a listen. It's so weirdly calming for a game like this, but if anything, I think that works perfectly in setting the tone. It gives it this old 1950s-esque factory tour advertisement kind of feel to it, and I love it, which leads into probably the most important part of the presentation, and that is the toys. Now, I've seen some people complain that some of the toys are a bit weird and therefore they wouldn't work in real life, but honestly, I kind of disagree with that. One of my absolute favorite things about all of Poppy's Playtime has got to be its Rogues Gallery lineup of toys/monsters that you will be seeing throughout these games. And the thing I love the most about them is how basically every single one of them you can easily find parallels to a real-life toy. And it's not even just in the main ones that try to kill you. Like, obviously, Huggy Wuggy and Kissy Missy are heavily inspired by those hugging monkey toys, though having a more Cookie Monster-esque look to them, or a, false information and thousand-year-door dick-sucking. Now that's actually scary. But even the side toys, like Brawn, the joke-loving Brontosaurus, like obviously they'd have a dinosaur toy, or Boogiebot, the dancing robot. Yeah, dancing toy robots, those were a thing. Or even Cat Bee, who isn't just a cat and a bee for the sake of it, she's from a toy line that's entire gimmick is swapping out animal parts. Because of course. And the list goes on. And on top of all of that, all of the main chapter toys at least, have their own commercial jingles for them.
His name is Huggy, Huggy Wuggy. When he hugs you, he'll never stop. Your friend Huggy, Huggy Wuggy, he'll squeeze you until you pop.
But this all leads up to Poppy Playtime herself, who I coincidentally haven't mentioned up to this point. But just look at her. She looks like a vintage doll from the 50s. Her toy's whole gimmick is the fact that she has brushable hair and that it's scented to smell like a poppy. And look at the commercial. It is caked in the era of the 1950s, even down to the narration and even the price point, just to really hammer in the fact to make it feel like these things were real toys that really existed. I mean, they kind of are now when you think about it. My point is, Poppy Playtime just nails atmosphere, and I love every bit of it. But anyways, now that we're done all that, we solve a few more puzzles, and now it's time for us to leave. We didn't really find any of the answers that we were looking for, but oh well, at least we got this cute cat bee toy. I don't foresee anything bad happening to us as we go down this hallway. Sweet Jesus, tap dancing Christ! This is Huggy Wuggy, the main antagonist of Chapter 1. And let's be real for a second, he and his chase sequence are quite possibly the most iconic part of this entire game, and it's not hard to see why. But before I get into this epic horrifying chase, I want to talk about its build-up. This is something that not many people talk about, but this moment is built up expertly. As seen earlier, when you enter the main part of the factory, you are greeted with this ginormous statue of Huggy Wuggy, just standing there. Menacingly! Not moving at all. I mean, it shouldn't move, but after you end up needing help for a puzzle, he mysteriously just has the key that you need. And then once you get the power going, he's gone. A giant thing like that just so quietly got away. So that immediately puts you on edge, but then throughout the rest of the chapter, he's stalking you, just barely staying out of reach of you, and always hiding just on the corner of your eye so your peripheral vision will just barely catch him. And it's usually around a time where you're just starting to forget about him and worrying about something else. All building up to this moment where you think you're home free, and boom, he just strolls out in front of you like he owns the place. Oh, and what I love is that this is not a cutscene. You can accidentally just run right into him if you're not quick enough. But anyways, as the alarms would signify, you're supposed to run into the vents to hide from him. What then follows is Huggy also jumping into the vents and chasing after you. This is where all the major things I've praised the game for up to this point really come into play to help elevate the game and this chase, but ironically work against you, the player, in the best of ways. The general gameplay of running for your life, the visuals, ideally in the gorgeously animated way Huggy is chasing you. As he runs through the vents, he clearly is not able to fit in, but manages to be just weird enough that it actually is scary and not silly. The sound design of him banging his way through the vents chasing after you at breakneck speeds, and even the music itself being so intense, which perfectly accommodates you running for your life in this maze, trying to make sure you don't take a wrong turn, which will immediately lead to your quick demise as he bites off your head. Despite the fact that this is a relatively short chase if you know what you're doing, it still even then keeps your heart racing the whole way through. Even though I was able to do it first try, when I was done my hands were still shaking, just from the tension of it alone. In my eyes, this chase is expertly done horror. But anyways, once you get out of the vents, you reach a dead end, and you have no choice but to drop a box onto Huggy, which causes him to violently fall down a chasm. I'm sure that killed him, and we won't have to deal with him ever again. So anyways, after being shaken up by that, you end up in this part of the factory that definitely seems a bit weird considering everything we just saw for a toy factory. This weird complex-like area with scaffolding everywhere. You end up finding one more VHS, which ends up talking about some huge event that went down, as you can tell by all the screaming of pain and agony happening, all relating to something known as the prototype. I am sure that's something we won't have to worry about soon. After that lore drop, you end up finding the flower that the letter at the beginning told you to, and you enter this vintage house setting as you go down following the melody of a music box, as you enter the final room, seeing this case containing Poppy Playtime herself. And you open it,
You opened my case.
and chapter 1 ends on that note. It's pretty obvious after everything I said, I love Chapter 1. Yeah, it's short, beatable in 20 minutes. Hell, if you know what you're doing, you could beat it in 10. But for what is basically a free demo, I think they put their best effort into this. An effort that we will see, in some admittedly shaky ways, improve as the chapters go on, turning a simple walking horror chase simulator into what I claim to be the best mascot horror game ever. But how does it do that? Well, stay tuned for the next chapter, as things will only begin to get crazier and scarier.
It's been so long.
Now, I'm your average bonehead Jay, and I wish you all good night. Oh, you're still here. Well, since you stuck around for this long, you might as well like and subscribe, comment if you're feeling really daring. And while you're at it, you might as well follow me on Twitter and Instagram at jayskeletyn, links down below. And if you just want to see more, you can check out the playlists or look at my last video. Now thanks for watching, and if you need me, I'm going back to bed